want you to help me celebrate. Our leader just walked in the room, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Come on, let's celebrate him while he's in the room. Thank you, Reverend. I see part of his family here, his son, Jonathan. We celebrate the family as well. We're honored to have them here. I want to bring greetings from our sponsorships, our sponsors and partners who are here with us today. First up, we're going to ask Miss Olivia Lang, who is Director of Workforce Initiatives, Faith-Based Partnerships with the organization CVS Health. She's going to come and share. Following her, we're going to ask Miss Georgette Dixon, Community Relations Officer. Gigi, I'm sorry. That's her nickname, all right. Wells Fargo Bank, one of our great collaborative partners here, sponsors for the Rainbow Push organization. Following her would be Maurice Coleman, the Senior Vice President and Senior Client Manager. Bank of America is here with us. And then Sekun Kalen, Head of Advancing Black Pathways of J.P. Morgan Chase, will come following Mr. Maurice Cole. I'm going to ask if they would come in this order.
Good afternoon. I consider it a privilege and an honor to bring remarks on behalf of CVS Health, and we thank you for this opportunity to share with you during this year's Ministers and Labor Leaders Luncheon. This gathering of caring leaders is most appropriate, and we are hopeful that our common goals and shared purpose will be attained today and for years to come. At CVS Health, we are healthcare innovators with a clear and simple purpose to help people on the path to better health. Health is at the heart of all that we do. It is our purpose, our promise, and our passion. Our strong local presence of nearly 10,000 communities enable us to engage people and care for them where they need it most. We are living our purpose for caring for our communities where we live, where we work, and where we worship, including interfaith community engagement, supporting workplace religious diversity and inclusion through our faith colleague resource groups, 2,800 strong, with the integration of Aetna Healthcare. As a committed business partner and stakeholder, we are changing lives by building healthier communities, increasing access to quality care, and better health outcomes. As a determined partner, we are maximizing every opportunity to break the cycle of poverty and build a strong, healthy workforce, and by building talent pipelines through the power of partnerships. And through the power of partnerships, we have exposed 1 million young people to CVS Health careers. We have transitioned over 110,000 from public assistance into healthcare careers at CVS Health. And we are partnering with schools and universities to deliver the next tobacco-free generation, a $50 million grant for the Be the First campaign for the next 5 years. And it is only befitting now that we also take this opportunity to salute you, our faith and labor leaders, and acknowledge the heart of service that you render as a beacon of hope and a gateway of opportunity. You are also at the heart of everything that matters. A healthy mind, a body, and spirit for all people. We are bound together by this value of caring, shared purpose, and compassion for others. So I will close by once again just thanking you, and we look forward to working with you, not for only mutual success, but in the interest of our communities at large. It is our hope that we will continue on this journey together on the path to better health with a commitment, shared purpose, and heart that has brought us thus far. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I bring you greetings from Wells Fargo and Company, and I want to acknowledge that my team members are in the house. Would the Wells Fargo team members please stand? Wave around. Take a good look. Take a good look. Each year we have the opportunity to provide a primary sponsorship of the Wall Street Project. And we also travel around the United States with Reverend Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition to deliver conferences, information, and access to resources at all of the conferences. Why do we do that? We do that because we understand the importance of partnerships. We understand the importance of legacy, and we understand the importance of working together to change a community, to change a condition, and to make a difference. At Wells Fargo, today we announced that as a philanthropy organization, we have given $444 million $444 million from the Wells Fargo Foundation over the past year. That is the top philanthropic giving of any corporation in America. United Way announced that we have volunteered more than any other company that is a United Way supporter in America. And Wells Fargo is all about that. We're about giving back, we're about actively engaging, and we're about listening. Thank you. We have needed desperately to listen. And thanks to the leadership of Reverend Jackson, we've had the opportunity to listen to how we needed to change things at Wells Fargo, how we needed to rebuild at Wells Fargo. And I just want to thank you personally, Reverend Jackson, for your leadership and your engagement with our CEO and leaders across the country. I want to thank strength and real wisdom and understanding from people like Axel Adams, who runs the 1,000 Churches Connected program for Rainbow Push. Through the ministries across the United States, your ministries, we're able to reach communities, provide access to financial capabilities, provide information about options for understanding and really leveraging financial assets. And hopefully, one day, we'll be able to celebrate the success of Black people maintaining home ownership, gaining home ownership, maintaining a legacy, keeping the land, understanding the taxes, understanding all of the things that work against us as a people to take our legacy. One day, maybe we'll all understand that, but we can't do that alone. And so I just stopped by today, like I do every year, and thank God that I'm able to do that. But I just stopped by today to say, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the legacy of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, my homeboy from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm grateful for the legacy of the Rainbow Push Coalition. And I challenge each and every one of us to keep the legacy alive as we keep hope alive. Wells Fargo is in it for the long haul. We've been here, we're going to be here. And we are grateful for every one of you in this room and beyond who understand the value of working with a company and individuals who really care and understand what partnership is about. So thank you so much for this moment, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Good afternoon. Oh, come on, we can do better than that. We're here to celebrate Rainbow Push. Good afternoon. So we heard about health. I'm going to tell you a little bit about wealth. My name is Maurice Coleman. I'm with Bank of America Merrill Lynch. And as Reverend Jackson told me walking up here to exercise the 5 B's of public speaking, be brief, brother, be brief. I plan to do just that, but I do have some ground that I want to cover today. First and foremost, let's give it up for Reverend Jackson and also Reverend Sharpton, who is here. Sir Isaac Newton said once, if it is said that I see a little further than others, it's simply because I stand on the shoulders of giants. Reverend Jackson, Reverend Sharpton, many of our leaders, they have epitomized the spirit of Joshua when he said, be bold, be brave, be courageous. Throughout the decade, we have struggled with access to capital for our small businesses. Reverend Jackson, Reverend Sharpton, our leaders have been there. We have struggled with foreclosure prevention. They have been there. We have struggled with student debt reduction. They have been on the front line fighting for that. And we have struggled for corporate board diversity to make sure that the corporations that provide the products that we consume also reflect those communities that they are serving. They have been there on the front line, and they have held banks like all three that you will hear from today, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, as well as J.P. Morgan Chase, which are the three largest financial institutions in the world and represent over $4 trillion in assets. You have them amassed right here in this room because they have decided to hold us accountable to not just do things right, but to make sure that we're always trying our best to do the right thing. And for that, they deserve a round of applause. So at Bank of America last year, we funded over $4.7 billion in low and moderate income communities throughout the country. In New York City alone, we put $600 million to work to fund affordable housing. Over $575 million to work to support small businesses. Over $45 million to work in philanthropy just to support our not-for-profit partners. We've done well, but it's not enough, which is why we're here today. So my message to you is very simple. I know that we're in some turbulent times. We know what's going on down in Washington, D.C., and we understand the administration. So I remind you of Romans when I say, the pain that you're feeling today can't compare to the joy that is coming. Let's not allow this current environment to steal our joy. Let's come together to make sure that we move forward because progress is our only option. Thank you very much.
This is one of those moments where you can just say, yeah, what he said. So, hi, I'm Sekou Kaland. I bring greetings from J.P. Morgan Chase. We've been a long sponsor of Rainbow Push, and so again, I echo those comments in terms of the support it has meant for people like me and like all of us here in this room. But I also want to share with you an announcement we made last week, and that is I'm humbled to lead a new initiative called Advancing Black Pathways. Very intentional in that, again, advancing black pathways. And as we know, talent is created equally, but opportunity is not. So you heard people talk about businesses. If people of color own businesses at the same rate as white Americans, it will result in 9 million more jobs and $300 billion in worker income. So just think about that. Opportunity is not created equally. So as we thought about this and wanting to be intentional in our company, we basically said, how can we marshal our resources as the largest bank to make sure we have an impact on the black community? So we're excited. We're going to be leveraging partners, many of you in this room, organizations like Rainbow Push, but we will be focused on 3 areas. Education, again, critically important, but not only important about education is the opportunity. So we will be committing to hire 4,000 black students over 5 years. And I can guarantee you, I don't know any firm hiring 4,000 black students across internships from high school, college, apprenticeship. People need that stamp on the resume to have a pathway to opportunity. We'll be working with careers, workforce development, investing in cities where we have a presence, even where we don't have a presence. And finally, because they told me I only have an hour to speak, no, I'm just joking, 4 minutes. So wealth, again, wealth is critically important. You know, we want to help build wealth. So changing the thinking around savings and investing and access to tools. We used to say keep it 100 in our community. Now we want to say keep it 700. Keep your credit score 700 so that you know that you have access to products at a better price. So again, we want to shift the dialogue and discussion in our community, and we don't want the monopoly on any of this. We want Bank of America, Wells Fargo, we want all the banks to be committed to making an impact in the black community. So again, thank you, honor for me to be here, and thank you, Reverend Jackson, Reverend Sharpton, for everything you've done to make it possible for me to be here on this podium today. Thank you.
We can say again, well said, well said. What did we just hear in the last 15 minutes? What one word comes to mind from any community leader in the room, especially pastors? Access, opportunity. That's what we hear. If you are a pastor or a community leader, you just heard from 4 organizations that talked about not talent, but opportunity and access. Now we must become accountable. How do we create collaborative partnerships, better understand how do we disseminate and distribute this information to where it matters most, where there is the differential investment that we must make when we go back. I don't know about you, but as a pastor in the state of Louisiana, I'm excited about what I've just heard in the last 15 minutes. It was well worth the trip to New York. Come on, somebody. It was well worth the trip. And I've been privy to be acquainted with most of these presenters who just presented. They are true men and women of their word. And this could not be possible again if Reverend Jackson didn't have the vision for such an opportunity, for such a collaboration. So again, Reverend, thank you for your visionary leadership and your thinking. We want to expedite, so we're going to tell you now lunch is served. So for those who are serving, they're going to facilitate that. You have a few minutes to eat and to perhaps network at your tables, and then we're going to come back and introduce one of the greatest speakers and motivational leaders and great thinkers of the 20th, 21st century. The Reverend Al Sharpton is in the room, so we're going to come back and introduce him in a moment right after our lunch is served, all right? Quiet just a little at your table. We're going to move our program forward. I've been asked to give recognition to one of our recipients of the Rainbow Push Coalition Google Faith Tech Lab. The Reverend Marshall is here with us. If you're here, will you raise your hand? He is a recipient, Williams Institutional CME Church, of the Rainbow Push Google Faith Tech Lab. Absolutely. Collaboration made possible by Reverend Jackson and the network of teams that work in the Valley to bring solutions to our communities. So again, we're honored to have him with us as well. And perhaps you who saw him wave his hand, pastors, you can perhaps network and better understand what that program is all about. At this time, I want to bring to the stage one of God's finest champions of truth and justice. I think it was W.B. Du Bois who says, "A thinker must think for truth and not for fame." And I believe this is in part the testimony of one of the greatest speakers I've had the privilege of hearing, who's with us today. He is the president and founder of the National Action Network. He's also host to Politics Nation, NSNBC. What a phenomenal leader from this area, the New York area, but a world traveler, none other than the person of the Reverend Al Sharpton. I want you to put your hands together. Come on, keep it coming until he makes to the stage. Let's celebrate him, one of God's finest. Let's hear him at this hour.
Thank you very much. Let me say that we must have a context of what we are doing here, because as we listen to our various corporate representatives, some people that just went to 3 rallies and call themselves an activist thinks that that is automatic and does not understand the history of how that happened. As we gather here this year with the Wall Street Project, We gather on the 400th year that blacks were enslaved and brought here to Virginia. 300th year that we were sold as the first commodity on Wall Street. The reason there is a African burial ground on Wall Street is the first thing they sold and traded on Wall Street were black bodies. So when we gather with the Wall Street Project, we are still unraveling the project they made us on Wall Street 300 years ago. When I was 12 years old and joined Operation Breadbasket under Dr. William Jones here in New York, and he brought me to Reverend Jackson, who wasn't then but about 26, 27 years old. Dr. King had appointed him the head of Operation Breadbasket, and I became the youth leader of this chapter. Dr. King's assignment to Reverend Jackson, which if you ever read Dr. King's last speech, a lot of y'all go to the mountaintop part and don't read the context. Just like a lot of folk quote I Have a Dream and don't read about the bounce check. Because we like the end of the sermons, but we don't like the meat of the sermon. And you can't really shout on a sermon if you miss the message in the sermon. You be shouting on the mess. That's when we entertain and not educate. That's why you got a lot of preachers out here now can hoop, but can't say nothing. I go to some churches, they ain't got no sermon because they just holler and then tell the congregation, repeat after me 5 times to let the congregation preach for them because they ain't got nothing to say. But that ain't what I got up here to say. If you hear Dr. King's whole speech, he referred to in the speech about those corporations we were boycotting then in '68. And he referred by name to Reverend Jackson, who was seated behind him with Dr. Abernathy, and talked about that economic empowerment, economic fight, economic inequality. A lot of our liberal friends want to take half of Dr. King's economic message, which was to romanticize just the poor people's march, which we had to deal with poverty and still do. But we were not trying to glorify poverty, we were trying to break poverty. And the only way to break poverty is corporate responsibility and accountability. Just to walk around acting like we just need y'all to feel sorry for us is half of the economic message. So the real assignment and the real test he gave Reverend Jackson on how we deal with corporate accountability and how we deal with the fact that the wealthy has continued to increase. And Reverend Jackson took that assignment and was leading that when Dr. King was killed and has led it on until this very moment. For 50 some odd years, over 50 years, over 60 years now, since he was a student. The reason that becomes important is that the Bible talks in continuity. The way you can tell the difference between a prophet and a fortune teller is if a person identifies with prophetic tradition. There's no prophet in the Bible that doesn't first say, in the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He doesn't talk about himself. He hooks to the lineage he came from. Even when we first meet Jesus, first thing Matthew did was say, let me tell you who Jesus was. St. Matthew, first chapter, brought him all the way back to the lineage of David. First thing Jesus did was go to the water, and he deferred to John the Baptist, who had been out there then. So when we see these people just jump up that we never seen before, that have never been connected, they will sizzle till they fizzle because they're not connected to nothing. Reverend Jackson came out of the tradition of Dr. King and of Howard Thurman and others, and would train us that came under him to study them. I was walking around high school, 13 years old, reading Paul Tillich because he told me to read it. And I didn't understand it till I got to college, but I read it, quoted it too. This is why I want you to understand the context of the Wall Street Project. When he started this in the late 1990s, it was just the next step from what we had done with corporations, what we've done with those that dealt with retail stores, all the way to Wall Street for trade. That is why you see people that are speaking today representing corporations, because they got jobs and assignments and positions because Jesse Jackson shook the tree and they picked up the apples. The problem we got is that many of us are shining apples and weeing on the trees. Apples can't reproduce themselves. Trees reproduce apples. The apple you shining on today won't be here in 3 or 4 days, but the root of the tree will be there. And unless you understand the root, you will not have fruit. You don't judge a tree by its branches or its fruit. You judge a tree by its root. And you can't judge the strength of a tree by the height of the tree. You judge it by how deep its roots run. And Reverend Jesse Jackson has strong roots. And never, ever let us forget that. So I think that it is important that we not take for granted that when we see people with big titles, they did not get those titles just on their background and their education and their pedigree. We always had blacks with pedigree. You ain't the first smart Negro in America. We always had blacks with education. Du Bois had one first decade of 20th century. What we didn't have was the ability to be considered until the Jesse Jacksons of the world opened the door for you. And then some of you got in there and bad-mouthed the folk that sponsored you in the first place. Nothing more imbecilic than a Negro getting in the C-suite, talking against the movement, and the folk want to go to the bathroom and laugh at him because the only reason he in the C-suite is because of the movement. Now, they'll humor you, but they know you out of your mind because they know you wouldn't even be sitting there talking to us if we were not afraid Jesse Jackson and others are coming after us. Well, no, I'm talented. You always was talented and unemployed. I got a bunch of talented folk right uptown in Harlem. Talent has never been at a shortage. It's our ability to have access to the highest levels. Now we have to have access to capital. And now we have to have access to trade. And under this present administration, it has become more graphic, but it has been true for the last several years. So I was at the first Wall Street Project. I was on the organizing committee. And we are here every year because we've got to deal with access to capital if we're ever going to be equal. We can be free enough to walk down Broadway, but we own nothing down here. Y'all sightseeing everybody's buildings but ours. You go up and get on top of this building and say it's a beautiful sight. None of it do we own. New York City, Big Apple, but we can't get a bite. And this is what the Wall Street Project was formed for, and this is why we're still here. And this is what our ministers need to deal with. So I want to bring to the stage a man that Dr. King appointed and anointed, and a man that has led us at great sacrifice and has spread seeds and have made those seeds grow into fruit and has lived to see some of what he fought for achieved, but is still fighting because it's not over yet. And every day of his life, he has given that commitment to fulfill God's calling and to do the assignment given to him by Dr. King. People say he's still on the scene, one, because it's a life commitment. Most of y'all New Year's plan your vacation at the expense of those that made you have the ability to afford one. He plans the next struggle. And secondly, because he can't help it, he's fulfilling a commitment he made to Dr. King and to God and to Helen Jackson. And if he gets amnesia, to Jacqueline Jackson. Let us greet the Joshua to the Moses of Dr. King, the one that brought us from trade, from aid to trade, from philanthropy to social justice theology, the man with the plan, the founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition and the creator of the Wall Street Project, our mentor, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr.
Tell every boy, girl, woman, and man, if I can think it, I can believe it, created and achieved, so I am somebody, oh, I am somebody.
Y'all can do better than that, come on.
Somebody be down and pushed away, but at the end of the day, I am somebody.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, in the throes of legal segregation of apartheid. But against those odds, with the help of God and loving parents and inspiring teachers, I was able to break that cycle and make a contribution. Reverend Sharpton, thank you for that revival. My heart delights in Reverend Al Sharpton. God has blessed me to watch him grow abundantly since he was 12 years old. Wore picket lines with him, to share jail cells with him, to watch him recover from being stabbed in the heart, fighting for justice in New York City. He has never given up. He only has one gear forward, by hope, never backwards by fear. I'm going to speak at the House of Justice this coming Saturday morning. Those of you in New York ought to give it a try. It's well worth the experience. But his consistency now, beyond without any doubt, with his 15 hours of radio per week and access to MSNBC, the voice of our time. A big hand for Reverend Al Sharpton. On your feet, on your feet, on your feet, on your feet. I want to say that I'm going to copy off of some of Reverend Al's information that he got from me. So we used to get up and quote Dr. King stuff. Dr. King said, I thought that we said, Dr. King, you were preaching, and we just discussing public policy. Well, let me suffice it to say, we returned to Wall Street 400 years later. I see my daughter, Santita, please stand. That's my daughter, Santita. My son, Jonathan. And somewhere in here is our rock, their mother, Jackie. Please stand if you're still in the room. Give a hand, just let the rumor go for it, let the rumor go for it. This morning I listened to Dr. Mercer and Dr. Hamilton in a session dealing with economic justice. the very esteemed writers, and Dr. Mercer, please stand up. And Dr. Hamilton, where you are. And they were discussing the analytics of our economy today. If they had been in Birmingham at Gaston's Motel discussing the analytics of our economy, it would have been out of place. That was not the issue of that day. If they had been in Selma discussing Wall Street, so you live in New York, you don't understand that's not our issue. We're early in the morning of the fourth stage of our struggle, early in the morning. And Du Bois said the color bar would be the challenge of the 20th century. So early in the morning. Many of us may feel like it's late in the evening for us, but it's early in the morning. If I were writing a freedom symphony, there are 4 movements in the symphony. The first movement was to end slavery. 200, specifically in 44 years, to end slavery. First time an African American's foot touched soil here as a citizen, January 1st, 1863. The 13th Amendment in 1865 did not free us. If we had not been free in 63, wouldn't have been no 65. And so that's the end slavery. Our skin complexion reflect that season. Look at our skin complexion today from light to dark. That's mean our parents were raped. No woman could cry rape. Only women could do that, and they were commodities. And when their wives were raped, the men were beaten, they couldn't go to court. Only the citizens could go to court. I think around 1950 something, before the first white man was convicted for raping a black woman. 244 years of legal slavery. Jim Crow was worse than slavery. At least in slavery we were commodities. And the thing, but we can't count reparations. Yes, we can. Somebody knows where everybody stayed. Every enslaved person was in somebody's book in some southern courthouse today. Everybody knows where everybody was, what ship they got off of, what time they arrived. Mark Thompson, everybody knows that. And when we were enslaved, unless we got caught trying to create a revolt or run off the plantation, they beat us but not kill us because they needed us to make little slaves and to work. Jim Crow came, we had the right to vote. We were the majority population, several southern states, Irish, majority. They made us walk from Arkansas to South Carolina to Arkansas, our own Trail of Tears. 5,000 blacks were lynched. We came north as refugees, driven by terror of undermining our politics. It's not just a latter stage called segregation. The third stage was the right to vote. After 350 years, the right to vote. There's been more progress since 1965 than between 1860 and 1865 because of the vote. You can be out of slavery, out of Jim Crow, have the right to vote, and starve to death without access to capital, industry, technology, and deal flow. If we're playing the lands in Memphis or Nashville, New York or San Diego, Miami or Atlanta, the plain lands, you will not see a single building, a single skyscraper owned by an African American. Not because we couldn't imagine, didn't have access to capital. Today, whites can get on an idea, but we can't get on collateral. That's discrimination. A white man gets on the corner and says, you know, I saw 1,000 cars pass this corner, Jonathan. Between 12 and 3, a hotel should go here on the idea, get the money to build a hotel. We can get the money we can't get that money with collateral. The nature of our situation. As Al indicated, when Wall Street was built, the hard hit is on Alabama, South Carolina, Mississippi. But we picked the cotton in the South. They processed it in Montgomery, but they sold it in New York. The riches of the shipbuilders, the shipping industry. The first state to end slavery was Vermont. It wasn't just Mississippi. The first money to fund Harvard, and Yale and Princeton came from those who shipped, importing us in from Africa and exporting cotton and tobacco. There's a scripture, and I'll leave on this, Brother Cleaver. When I was a kid, Jackie Robinson was the guy. Everybody was a Brooklyn Dodger. Then we had Campanella, and God rest his soul, Don Newcomb died yesterday at 92. But somehow, all that, we couldn't beat the Yankees, Al. They just, Yogi Berra and Gil McDougal, somehow they'd look up and win. But in 66, I guess it was, right about that, Don, we had Colfax and Drysdale. We could win that time. And we were all excited about Colfax throw the opening pitch and Drysdale and Colfax and Drysdale. Colfax wouldn't pitch. So what's wrong with him? Somebody, his religion. What kind of religion is that? There was no NBA, there was no NFL. What kind of religion he got? I mean, he ain't gonna pitch to open the game of the World Series. The Jewish people in Exodus 13:3, it says, remember this day when God put his mighty hand and saved you from slavery. There's no higher holiday to the Jewish people than saving them from slavery. Not because they were so slick and so smart and had an army. God interceded and helped them. When was the day God did that to us? In the fall of 1862, Lincoln said if the South didn't rejoin the Union, he would free even us, which was their economic backbone and the supply line for their soldiers. Christmas meant nothing to us as a holiday because we couldn't shop and we didn't have any money. But the deal was New Year's Eve. The deal was watch night. Not good guys go to church and bad guys have private parties. Watch night was watching all night long and sing and see if Lincoln would sign that bill the next morning. And we didn't have no CNN to tell us to watch the signing either. It just shot across the country. And so we got freed that day. The South would have won the war. It was far north as Antietam, Maryland, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. When Lincoln freed us, we freed Lincoln. We freed Lincoln and Lincoln freed us. It was a deal. We saved the Union. If we had not won that war, the 4th of July would be the shot out of Fort Sumter, not 4th of July. And we're probably speaking French because we've been under Jefferson Davis, not under Abraham Lincoln. Y'all hear me now? That's why we gather here. This year has big meaning for us. When God, it says Lincoln was hesitant. It wasn't just about Lincoln, it's about God. Created a situation where we were necessary. The only protection against genocide is remain necessary. We were necessary. We saved Lincoln and the Union. Lincoln freed us as a trade-off. 12 years we were betrayed. Children Hayes Compromise, we were betrayed, but we saved the Union. And I said because we got to change the narrative on who we are and what matters to us the most. So we come back to Wall Street, Brother Cleaver, because the bones of our foreparents are on Wall Street. So African burial ground down there. First African Methodist church is on Wall Street. At some point, they moved us to the other end of the same island called Harlem. They moved the help to the other end. The further they get from them, Wall Street. It was even in the 1670s, blacks built a wall on Wall Street to stop the Dutch, to protect the Dutch from the Indians. We built the wall on Wall Street. That's why it's named Wall Street, because of our work. Did y'all hear me this day? We built the wall on Wall Street, so why it's named Wall Street. Because blacks built a wall to protect the Dutch settlers from the Indians. That. So we come back now answering the calls of our foreparents in the graveyard today, who beg us to come back home. We come back home after laboring 3 weeks in that ship with 55 Congress people, black. 55. Maxine Waters will speak tomorrow. She has the finance. She has subpoena power. She can subpoena the records of the shipbuilders. She can subpoena the records of the slaveholders. We come back 55 years, 155 Congress people. Edward Bernice Johnson out of Dallas, Texas, as a chairman. She can seize the records of Silicon Valley, of telecommunications. I'm not sure we really know what the 55 mean. We got to study what does it mean to have 55 Congress people, Bob? What does that mean? 38 Latinos who have the same agenda, and 20 Asians. We come back with a different America today. And no matter what Trump does as he embarrasses white men, he's the best they got. And that lowers the bar. Understand he is going to get Nobel Peace Prize. N-O-B-A-I-L. Nobel Surprise. You get Nobel Peace Prize, the N-O-B-A-I-L Peace Prize. But when it's real, in this room, y'all got that little late, didn't you? If this room were perfectly dark, with no lights, someone lit one candle, would challenge all the darkness. We come back with lights, exposing darkness. And we're the bearers of that light. Each of us has a light. The fact that some people should be here, ain't here, is beside the point. We don't need someone else to give us light. Say God gave each of us a light of our own. And we have the power to light up the darkness. So I want to thank the banks that are here today. And sometimes they've not done the right thing. But I'd rather have a wounded ally than a whole-heeled right-winger. Lesson to be learned, I got to go on this one, in Virginia. They say that the governor got on blackface, and you got to get rid of him. Don't let the white people assign to us who is the threshold for racism in us. Blacks who live in Virginia, 60% said keep him. Blacks who live in Virginia, they would rather have a wounded guy who fought for border enforcement, a wounded guy who stood with us against Robert E. Lee, a wounded guy who fought for Medicaid, and to have a whole guy who's against it. That's what they made on the ground. And while you focus on the guy with the black face 35 years ago, they can ignore a woman, Hyde Smith, in Mississippi. So she was on the front says a lynching party. Now, she walks without a protest. The governor of Florida, when Gillum was moving, said, the little monkey man, he's the governor today. The governor in Georgia, Secretary of State, stole votes, had to get them back by a court order, and stole the election from Stacey Abrams. So we cannot just spend all our time looking on blackface in Virginia, because He'll wash that face. Our black face don't change with the washing. In this season of struggle, there have been some who didn't surrender. You either adjust or you resent or you resist. When Dick Hatcher became mayor in 1967 in Stokes, they were national heroes. A mayor in Gary, a mayor in Cleveland. When Cleaver became mayor of Kansas City out in the Middle West, not a Gary, not a majority black town, a mayor of Kansas City and reelected. Minister of the gospel. A political leader who sees the Bible as representing power, not just piety. Who preaches and makes sense at the same time. Sometimes that's irreconcilable, but he preaches and makes sense at the same. Brothers and sisters, one who is a legislator and who preaches and makes sense at the same time, Brother Cleaver. Almost said the Eldridge Cleaver. Reverend Cleaver from, from Kansas City. Put your hands together. Put your hands together, on your feet.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you. Eldridge is my cousin, but he won't be here today. I am thrilled to be here with two colleagues, great preachers and Americans. Reverend Al, I said on a TV interview that if we didn't have Al Sharpton, we'd be looking for him. And Reverend Jesse Jackson, there's 1,000 ways to talk about him and his vision, and we all are the better because of him. And I'm glad to be here. Let me just tell you, let me follow up on one little thing that Reverend Jackson said. The night the night before New Year's, the night before the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, it rained in Washington. Black people came on New Year's Eve, black women, with long dresses. Men dressed up the best they could with tuxedos. And what you know today as the Rotunda, they slept in there that night. Next time you're on Capitol Hill, and there are about 3 fireplaces in there. They kept the fires going all night. They wanted to be the first ones after the signing to be free, at least to know that they were free. And then when you go down to the visitor center, you got to go down, look in the main room on the wall. Says that the visitor center was dedicated to the slaves who built the Capitol. And the person responsible for the world knowing that is Jesse Jackson Jr., who introduced the legislation that was approved for the naming of the, for making sure that the history of the Capitol wouldn't get lost. I think the chair of our committee, the Financial Services Committee, will be here tomorrow, and she'll probably tell you something. I've always been a little skeptical about having this out in the public realm, but Financial Services Committee is the committee of money, of Wall Street, and we don't have any reporters in, do we? We do? Oh, Lord. Okay, let me do it this way. We were in a meeting last week, and Gregory Meeks said, we ought to take a photograph. And I said, oh, no, I'm not going to be in the photograph. And he said, why? And I said, look here, we got chairman of the committee black. We got 5 subcommittees. 4 of the chairs of the subcommittee are black. I said, we got to keep that quiet. Man, Lord help. You know, don't send no pictures out like that. I mean, Gregory Meeks of New York is the chair of the Committee on Financial Institutions. Wall Street. We also have Hal Green, who's a former judge from Houston, who chairs the Committee on Financial Investigations. Y'all not walking with me. And then you got Lacey Clay, my homeboy, St. Louis, who chairs the Committee on Housing and Insurance. I chair the Committee on Financial Security. Lord help. That's the committee that handles sanctions, as well as the committee that deals with the World Bank, the IMF, and EXIM banks, export-import banks. So you may get a picture of why I don't want photographs. One of the things I asked people downstairs, I said, well, Meeks is not up there, is he? Because I don't even want the two of us in the picture together. We have a lot of work together to do, and we just started last week. So give us a day or two. We had to get out of the shutdown before we could do anything, and we had our first meeting, and I know our chair will talk about it. She'll probably talk about she does have subpoena power, and people are trembling all over America, and some of them should be. So let me just share some things that I think would be important, particularly for preachers, but for all of us, that we might have overlooked that happened last December. But let me, first of all, just kind of share with you, because I think it's connected. Some of you may have heard of the Pool of Bethesda. It was located, according to John, one of the gospel writers, that it was located near the Sheep Gate. The Sheep Gate, which we don't exactly know the location in today's world, but the Sheep Gate was where they brought in the sheep so that the Jews could buy sheep to go into the synagogue for sacrifice. And the sheep market was right outside the Sheep Gate. And the gate in Jerusalem is where the people worshiped Jehovah, God. And every single day, hundreds and hundreds, some writers say thousands, showed up every single day because they believed that the bubbling waters of the pool at Bethesda would bring about miraculous healing. That if one could just get into the pool when the angel troubled the waters, a healing would occur. And the angel never set any time to say, I'm gonna be there at 3:30 or something like that. So you had to have faith that the angel was gonna show up. And so every single person who was ill and could get to Bethesda was there every day. I know you're wondering what this has to do with Wall Street. It do. Now, the angel, also known in that day as the angel of the waters, would come and the water would begin to bubble. and bubble and move. And as soon as that happened, all kinds of people with every imaginable malady was trying to get to the waters. Now, there was a man who had been visiting there for 38 years. John doesn't give us his name. None of the other gospel writers gave us his name. I guess it wasn't that important. But we do know a little bit about him. And this 38-year visitor was trying to get in the water. And he was there every day. He was looking for the opportunity to get into the waters. All he wanted was the opportunity to get there. Now, as far as we know, there was no racial requirement to be in line. In other words, there was no discrimination based on face or race or place. It's just who could get to the waters. Now, I may be wrong, but that's I'm telling you what the gospel writer said. Now, this nameless man had put in nearly 4 decades. This thing, 4 decades trying to get into the waters. He wanted to seize the opportunity to get into the water, and he'd been working on it for 4 decades, 38 years. We don't know exactly what's wrong with him. The gospel writer, said he was impotent. Now, I don't usually like to talk about that, preachers, because no, see what you're talking. See what I'm talking about? Because when they said impotent 2,000 years ago, it had nothing to do with sexuality. Y'all not walking. It had to do with maladies. It meant that he was weak, that he had problems that could have been mental or physical. All we know is that he was a weak man, couldn't get into the waters, and he'd been trying for 38 years. That's what the gospel writer tells us. And so we here at the luncheon today thinking about this enormous challenge of wealth, of the wealth gap, and expanding opportunities. And we must, I think, take a certain level of ownership and some responsibility. We must recognize that we have to do the necessary work to be prepared to seize the opportunity when it comes our way. Now, sometimes, we ought to be able to get the opportunity, even though it's tough. I'm going to get into this in a minute. But this man, when I read this again last week, thinking about coming here today, I thought, the man could have crawled. Maybe he could have scooted, he could have done the worm. I mean, he could have grabbed onto somebody's leg and said, I'm not going to turn you loose till I get my blessing. I mean, he could have gotten somebody's robe or something. I'm not trying to be hard on this man, but it's 38 years. And you already know the story, but I'm going to tell it to you again anyhow, because it may be a little different than you heard it before. But there are things we can do. For example, when you look at where we are as African Americans, we have nothing to lose, and so why not put forth everything we have in terms of intellect and energy to get what we need? Now, if you think about it, we're in a situation right now where the top 1% of America's richest families have more than doubled their total wealth, while in the same period of time, the bottom 40% of Americans have fallen into what we call negative wealth. In other words, not people here, but at our church, they say list your assets and have to write it under the line because they don't have any. Negative assets. Now, the median African American had almost 50% less wealth in 2016 than they did in 1983, 33 years ago. The total wealth of the median white family is over 22 times that of the median Latino family and 42 times that of the means of a black family. Now, I'm not trying to give you these numbers to criticize the top 1% of white families' wealth. I mean, all of this stuff about, money is the root of all evil and all that crazy stuff. Brokenness is the root of all evil. You tell me somebody who's broke, I'm going to show you some evil. Now, the scriptures tell us that we are all one. Proverbs 22:2 says, the rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of all of them. Now, I provide that information to demonstrate that if we work hard, take some responsibility, that we can do some things. Now, this is not the kind of evangelical, everything that happens to you happens because of you refuse to take responsibility. That's not what I'm talking about. But I do believe that there are some things that we can do, and we ought to do it. And, one of the things that I think is important for us to keep in mind is that I provide that information because you're going to hear it all the time. And if working hard and responsibilities ended up as the sole factors in determining wealth and opportunities, the divide wouldn't be manifesting itself in such disproportionate ways in communities of low income and of color. My grandma, Annie Mae, worked herself to the bone, She picked cotton, and then she was a hauler. You city people don't know what hauler is. That means people paid her 50 cents to take them to the cotton field. And then the man would give her $1 every day for bringing them there. And then my grandmother would get out and pick cotton and give me a little croaker sack. Little croaker sack. So I would pick next to her. She'd have 2 rows. At the end of the day, my grandmother's hands were bloody. Bloody. So working hard is not necessarily going to get you rich. And we've been working hard. My daddy worked 3 jobs. I lived in a shack, a real one. I'm not talking about somebody that have a little rundown 3 or 4 bedroom house. I'm talking about a shack. I didn't live in a house with indoor plumbing until I was 8. And I'm in the suburbs of Dallas, Texas. And we moved out of the shack into public housing. We stayed there 5 years. My daddy worked 3 jobs to get us out of the project. He bought a house in the white neighborhoods, and at night, he had the house builders to move it over to the black side of town, the east side. He lives in it today. He's in there this afternoon. 3 jobs. He worked hard. So working hard is not necessarily going to get you rich. And a black folk been working hard since the beginning of the time. I mean, this is not new for us. And so this man at the pool in John 5 may have lacked a little determination. He may not have had the kind of willpower we needed, but he could have done better. And let me tell you why I think he could have done better. Opportunity will knock, but the knock is not continuous. I mean, the opportunity is not going to just hang around and say, I sure hope he gets me tomorrow. I mean, opportunity comes and it's gone. And we have to take advantage of the opportunity. Right now, we have something called the opportunity zones. It's under my committee. Opportunity zones, in my estimation, I think everybody who understands it will agree, is the most significant piece of legislation for urban redevelopment and black and brown wealth that we have ever had in the history of legislation in the country. Let me tell you what happens with the opportunity zone and what I'm going to suggest that you do as a result. The opportunity zones allows corporations to use their capital gains, the tax that they would pay on capital gains, and invest it in a distressed areas. We have 52 million African Americans as of today living in distressed communities. 52 million. The opportunity zones have already been approved. New York, wherever you live, they've already been approved. And it's unfortunate that the word didn't get out so you could have been involved in the drawing of the opportunity zone. The first opportunity zone drawn in this town included some land owned by Jared Kushner and Ivanka. I'm not making this up, this on camera. Yeah. It was. Thank God it was discovered and cut it out. Because I knew what was coming in my community, we drew the lines. Now the governors have to approve the lines and send it to Treasury, so they've already been approved. Now there are some problems that you have to be careful about, and one is that as the legislation is written now, we're trying to change this. If an opportunity zone bumps into a community that is not included, there is just simply a Treasury's approval that would allow them to move into that area. So let's say the opportunity zone runs up to the street, across the street from Hollywood Boulevard. Well, a developer can say, well, I'm going to just take my project on the other side of Hollywood Boulevard. So you can end up with some wealthy areas if you're not careful. But here's the thing. We are expecting $2 trillion to be invested. They can only invest it in a distressed community. Y'all, come on, listen to me. Only in a distressed community. Corporations are going to do well because if you leave the investment there for 10 years, you pay 0 taxes on capital gains. 0. Now, let me digress and I'll come back in just a minute. You will never become wealthy with a job. Now, I'm not advocating that people don't work. You don't understand what I'm saying. I'm saying you need a job. Just don't expect to be wealthy. Yeah. We're looking for a job while other people are looking for wealth. So you don't want to get a job in the opportunity zone. I mean, if you know, I mean, it'd be okay, but what I'm suggesting that you do is to make sure that when somebody invests in an opportunity zone, that they have African American participants not in working at some company, but a part of the ownership. I mean, these people are going to clean up $2 trillion. Tell you what happened in Kansas City. We had American Cablevision. They want to have the franchise for the cable TV in Kansas City. So we said, oh, okay, that's fine. And so they're getting happy. So then the mayor says, but you got to have some black ownership, and you got to have some brown ownership. And they grumbled. So it's easy, as I would say to the folk, you know, it's easy. You don't have to do it. We got other cable companies trying to come in here. So, you know, so now you can either have ownership with some black and brown folk, or you don't get the deal. Now these people want some coverage for their capital gains. They get it, and the only way they can get it is investing in an opportunity zone. Some folk ought to get, in cities all around this country, an opportunity for ownership, some kind of ownership or some kind of economic participation that goes beyond just having a job. I mean, if they're going to get richer off of us ought to get something. We can't let this go. This is an opportunity. It's called opportunity zones. I introduced this with 35 other folk in 2016. Paul Ryan would never bring it to a vote. This past December, I wake up one morning and we get our daily information about the votes on the floor. And guess what's on the floor? Opportunity zones. Not my bill along with the other folk, but it's just been snatched and put inside the tax bill. So the tax bill is approved with opportunity zones in it. Now, most people didn't read the tax bill. Nobody did. And I'm serious, because we were told they finished the bill at 3 a.m. in the morning. It was on the floor, I think, at 11 a.m. And we're talking, over 1,000 pages. And buried in there is opportunity zones. And it's going to be a project that operates without regulations, in the sense that, you don't even have to send in an application. You have to, the process is still being cleaned up, but you have to submit a letter to Treasury that you're getting ready to start your opportunity zone, and you deal with it at the end of the year when you pay your taxes. Now, let me just say another thing. My wife runs a not-for-profit. She runs one. She ain't rich. She ain't gonna get rich running a not-for-profit. Every time we start talking about economics in the black community, we start talking about some kind of not-for-profit. Don't get mad at me. You start looking around and seeing who's running the economic not-for-profits. I don't care where you live. I don't have to visit your town. I know already. We do it in my town. We got a not-for-profit shopping center. Kansas City, Missouri, not-for-profit shopping center. Look, I support not-for-profits, but not for economic development. We had to go through that at one point. Now, churches get involved in economic opportunity, but some of the church members ought to get involved in this to make money, serious money. Now, we're not going to have this come back. In fact, I don't think that the Opportunity Zone is going to be around, but probably for another maybe 14, 15 months. It falls under my committee, and I tell people all the time, there's going to be a day when the attorneys in my office are going to come and say, you know, we're losing so much money out of the Treasury that we can't keep this going. And so then you're going to see or hear an announcement or read about an announcement that says all Opportunity Zones have been ceased at this point on this date. Because we're not going to be able, we just took a $2 trillion hit with the tax bill, and this would be another $2 trillion on top of that. And that runs up our debt and our deficit. So that's something that we can do right now in your own communities. And pick everything up you can read about it. There was a last comment period was this past Thursday, and which means that we're probably about 30 days away when people are going to start. You have a chance to go home and get yourselves involved in Opportunity Zones. And if you don't know about it, they probably because they don't want you to know about it. Now, this man had been at this pool for 38 years. Opportunity. And he never was able to understand that just being at the pool was an opportunity to get healed. Now, on this particular day, one of the regulars showed up. He'd been doing this for 38 years. There was nothing special about this particular day. This unnamed man was among hundreds, maybe thousands, who hoped that when the angel troubled the waters, they would manage to get into the bubbling so that they could receive this miraculous healing. And as I mentioned, in Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus spoke, Bethesda means house of grace. In Hebrew, which is a similar language but not spoken by Jesus, it meant house of mercy. And so on this particular day, Jesus shows up at the pool. Now, whenever Jesus shows up, you pretty much can count on justice plus mercy plus grace. When Jesus shows up, mercy and grace are already there. I'm talking about the Bible. They were already there. Grace and mercy already there when Jesus shows up. Now, I don't know what drew Jesus to this man, but the gospel writer says that Jesus focused on this veteran visitor to Bethesda. And when he saw the man laying there, Jesus asked him a simple question that all of us need to ask ourselves. We all ought to go through a point of self-interrogation. Do you want to get well? Do you want to be made whole? Do you want to get your problem fixed? And it was a legitimate question. After all, the man had been showing up for 38 years without managing to get into the pool. He'd had an opportunity 38 years and didn't take it. Now, Jesus had to ask him a question. I mean, anybody would come and say, man, do you want, look here, man, are you interested in getting well? My grandmother, I got in trouble with her once. I called my older sister Laura stupid. My grandmother said, I don't ever want to hear you call anybody stupid. This man is stupid. Let me tell you, and I think Grandma in heaven, God, Grandma, let me tell you why I said that. Jesus said, do you want to be well? Do you know what the man said? He said, well, you know, I could have made it, but nobody would help me. I can't get no grant. I can't get no grant. I'm out here by myself. Now read the text. I might have gotten some of the words a little turned around, but read the text. The man essentially says, well, I have no man to help me. So I'm just going to lay here for 38 years. I'm going to just lay here. Do you want to get well or not? And that's the issue for us, African Americans, as we assemble with this Wall Street project. Do we want to be well, or do we want to just wait till we get a grant? Do we want to wait till somebody decides to help us? We can help ourselves on some of these things, and one of them is right now. Look, what Reverend Jackson, we got 55 members, black folk in Congress, and in major positions to make things happen and to stop things from happening. Do you want to be made well? We can be made well. Now, you can't listen to this, these people down here with the White House. Look, let me tell you this. I'm going to go sit down. When Woodrow Wilson was president, his Secretary of the Interior went down to Oklahoma to visit the Indian reservations. And so they had all of the tribes in a big building, and he had to address them, and he was trying to figure out, because they had a bad record dealing with Native Americans. And thank God we have 2 in Congress now. We had 2 in Congress now. But so they had a horrible reputation. So he starts talking to the Native Americans. He's not saying very much, and so he said, I got to say something. He said, we're going to build new housing, 52 units of housing here on this reservation. And so all of a sudden, the people came to life, and they say, ho yay, ho yay. So this man started feeling pretty good. And so we're going to build some new schools, ho yay, ho yay. So this crowd's almost like a black preacher. They responded now. And then we're going to build a hospital, ho yay, ho yay. And they're standing on their feet, ho yay, ho yay. So he goes after this program. He's feeling pretty like they're going to probably make me an honorary member. So they go into a room and say, Mr. Secretary, I hope you understand what we need. He said, well, yeah, I understand. He said, but what I want to do is, you take me around now. I want to tour this cattle area. Y'all raised some good cattle around here, we're told. So the chief said, okay, Mr. Secretary, but you got to watch out and don't step in none of that hoche, because what I'm trying to tell you, when you listen to what's going on in the White House, don't watch out for that hoye. Watch out, don't step in that hoye. Now we got some folk working, trying to make some things happen. But we don't need you walking around stepping in the hoye. You got to understand who you are and whose you are. We are the children of the great alms-giving God. We are the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, I still believe, nobody can make me believe otherwise, that God still sits on the throne, and that Jesus is still healing. He told that man, get your blanket and walk. Stand up and walk. And that's what we have to tell black folk right now more than anything else. Stand up. Get yourself up. Stand up straight. You're now walking straight with the power of God Almighty. That's how we got this far. You think people, because we had some smart people working, real Mal said, people walking around in Wall Street thinking they got there. I'm smart. My grandpa was smart. Went to the 4th grade. We've been having smart people since the beginning of time. We're not the first smart people, but hopefully you're smart enough to know where to go to get the power that you need. This little boy going to the grocery store with his mama, and she walks in the store, puts him in the basket, said, now boy, let me tell you, you start asking for them chocolate chip cookies, and I'm telling you, Daddy, when you get home, you're not getting any. So he said, yes, ma'am. She's moving down the aisles, and then she goes down the cookie aisle, and he's trying his best not to get in trouble. Oh, Lord. So they make it down the aisle, and he said, oh, man, I made it. And she gets a few other items, and then she goes to the checkout counter. But he realizes that everything is lost once she gets into that checkout line, because there's no chocolate chip cookies in that basket. So she's pushing the basket. Finally, he said, oh, I got to do something. He's a little church boy. So he had this idea. He stands up in the basket, stretches out his hand like he had seen the preacher do. And he said, in the name of Jesus, somebody bring me some chocolate chip cookies. And people all over the store running around putting cookies in the basket, giving him everything he needs. And why? Because there's power still in the name of Jesus. There is hope still in the name of Jesus. There's grace still in the name of Jesus. There's economic power still in the name of Jesus. Woo, 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 woo.
Can we say woo, 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 woo? That's going to be the code word for today. Come on, can we appreciate the Reverend Congressman Emanuel Cleaver II? Thank him for his very direct and focused and inspirational remarks. As I would ask the Congressman to come back, and please hold your places because there are a couple of important announcements before we leave in a presentation that needs to be given as Reverend Jackson and the Congressman are coming. To the Congressman's point, there's a very important discussion that is happening as soon as we leave here in the Riverside Ballroom, which is as you go out this door down the hallway to the left. A couple of my colleagues are here. Dr. Alvin Hathaway, who heads up Transforming Communities. He's a principal with Transforming Communities in Urban America. And Robert Farmer, who's the Senior Vice President of Development and Capital of Markets with Urban America, are actually going to hold a presentation on opportunity zones. We're actually going to have a hands-on conversation about opportunity zones and the timeliness of our engagement. Many times our churches are in the zone, but the zone gets developed around us and without us. This is the woo, 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 woo moment when we leave here. And then for those of you who will be looking at how sports teams use public funds for private interest, how stadiums get built and communities lie in ruins around it, Dr. Jamie Pleasant from Clark Atlanta University is going to be in the New York East Ballroom right outside to the right, just go around the corner. But that opportunity zone conversation is getting ready to happen as soon as we get here. The good part is you have to walk past the restroom so you can stop on your way, get the extra energy that you need so we can have this conversation. We are glad now that Reverend Jackson will come and acknowledge the work. I'll do it. Congressman Cleaver was not just here to speak. He's here because he has put his hands to work. He talked about his father's hands. He's used his hands and his strength in a different way. And now, from the position of influence that he holds, he who sits in power has told us how to speak truth. If we have heard him, we will heed him, but it is important that we honor him for the work that he's done. And so won't you stand all across the room as we honor and appreciate Congressman Emanuel Cleaver II, member of the Financial Services Committee, chair of the Subcommittee on Housing and Insurance, and one of the senior whips of the Democratic Caucus. Thank you, sir, for your service and your leadership.
Let us continue to stand together. All clergy, raise your hands, please. We're going now to the next session. They just built a tremendous new stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. They moved churches and houses to build the stadium. The man who was in charge of it didn't put up any money for it. How do you build stadiums? How do you go from picking cotton balls to picking footballs and grow? Dr. Jamie Pleasant, who was here, pastor, first African American to get a PhD from Georgia Tech in what he does. Former Clemson football player, still rejoicing with beating Alabama so badly, John. But raise your hand, Dr. Pleasant. Where is he? He's going next door? Is that where all us going, next door? Let us pray. Thank you, Brother Mark Ellis. Thank you so much. We do not take you for granted. Across these years, through it all, you've sustained us and blessed us, kept us in your bosom, protecting us from the warm heat and from the cold weather. You are God and we're your people. And we will have done our best, and we must do our best to get up and walk. If we fail in our trials, your grace is sufficient.